The problem. A lot of ground to cover. Hopefully I get it all without skipping anything. Should have just played you a little clip of how this is currently behaving. This is Fish's Kythera build that originally we had it in the combat machine that we got as a raffle gun from Bingfield at Dark Harvest 8. And in that body, it shot beautifully. We didn't have any issues at all. It always shot consistent. The problem we had was with both of Fish's combat machines, the front rail being polymer mounted. Anytime he would have a fall or bump, it would bend the inner barrel from the force of the fall, and then he'd be out for the match. So we made a push to try to pick out any metal receiver that we thought that we could tune to get the right nozzle alignment with the hop-up chamber and engagement, so that it could be just a metal body, nothing else, just buying for the shell, and be stronger for impacts. That was the goal. However, what it seems to be doing, as I think the video really shows it, the nozzle is showing rubbing on the top of the hop-up chamber, building up friction, and then after a certain point, it starts having a lot of missed cycles. I don't believe it's double feeding BBs. I believe it's simply the nozzle is too much resistance. So then in that scenario, the Kythera cannot properly cycle because it's being stuck mid-cycle. Somehow it's not using the recharge cable to fix itself. It'll keep shooting, but it's those missed cycles that are just really weirding me out. Can't really dial in other than I got to try to get the friction out of this. We have made a decision that for now, in order for Fish to start playing again, we're just going to put it back into the G&G body, and I'll figure out a way to get this front rail onto the polymer and just cross our fingers for the best. He's not really well budgeted for going all out on a Wolverine build right now, so we're trying to make do with what we got. So I'm going to take you along for the ride of showing how far we have gone to try to adjust the nozzle the best we can with what the body we were given. So far, I'm very against APS's quality because this issue was present with both a G&G gearbox and the original APS gearbox. We've tried both because we knew the G&G gearbox and the G&G body worked great. So we brought it back, but we're still having the same problem. My worry is that the way APS reverse engineered Tokyo Marui, they put these pin locations in the wrong spot, and there's a little bit of misalignment going on. Even with original hop-up chambers, Bugatti Neptune hop-up chambers, Silent Alpha hop-up chamber in there now, Max hop-up chambers, we've gone through a slew. I think the best results was with the Crytac polymer because it's slicker, so less chance of binding, but still was a problem, just not as much. Also with the Crytac, since it's using a traditional bucking style, it did not have the range that we wanted. So we were really trying to make some of these other options work for us. Off the bat, from what I can tell you, if you're not familiar with APS, this buffer tube does not bolt into the back of the gearbox. So it cannot pull it back and lift the nozzle high. Those are two separate components. The only things that you have for positioning the gearbox is going to be the two pins, the two threads for the grip screws, which currently are shouldering up against the body. So what we did is we currently have two rubber washers placed in between there in order to prevent the grip from pulling it down all the way. So that's shimming it forward to pivot about whatever we can. And then we considered adding set screws to push down on the gearbox, or maybe drill through here and actually thread into the gearbox to pull it down further. Now that we've tried the tricks, I'm going to tear down and show you the ways that we have used to diagnose this sucker. Starting first with a barrel alignment test. So the barrel alignment test, for those who don't know, you're taking the crown of a good inner barrel and you're inserting it down in order to see how the outer barrel guides it to your nozzle. And then you're seeing kind of the plus or minus, the high and the low, and you're kind of figuring that in the middle of that range is where your alignment is. Now, this does take into consideration you're using a barrel long enough to use the entire outer barrel. So any shorter outer barrel will have more range, and then anything that at least goes through the outer barrel will have the same effect as this. So, don't know if this is going to pick up on camera, but you just go high, low, and you kind of see exactly how you're lining up. I want to say this is going too far. I'm going to try a couple different spots and then I'll clip out later. But now we're rubbing heavy low. Didn't have that problem before. Hitting low, hitting low. I don't know what the perfect angle is for the camera, so I'm just doing it over and over. Okay. So the fact that we've gone from the high side to the low side actually does give me a little bit of confidence. Maybe we can dive into this a little more. But it has been quite a trip. So next I'll show you what we have done for shimming. Right now what I've done is I've got 6 layers of electrical tape on the bottom in order to push the nozzle, well, the hop-up chamber as high as I can, because the nozzle used to be hitting on the high side. So now we have the nozzle low and the hop-up chamber high, so yeah, that's fighting. Now, with the receivers, we also applied the tape between the receiver trick, but I don't think it's really making a huge impact. I mean, it's definitely making this pin almost press fit. Does have to require force to insert. So that was to effect to tilt the receiver in order to lift the hop-up chamber into place. So that is also raising high. So I think an easy thing to check now that we've seen the barrel test. Let's go ahead and take this shim off, redo the barrel test. Now there's no more shimming between receivers. So the only adjustment we have at this stage is what we have done with the grip side and the pin out. Honestly, that is looking very nice. I will not lie. See if I get the angle for y'all. All right. So now with that change, we'll try again. Okay, this combination, we have the center pin out, the tape between receivers is gone, the tape under the hop-up chamber is gone. I noticed now tape under the hop-up chamber lifts it too high to even mate with the gearbox shell. So all tape is gone. This is just pin out, tighten grip. Okay, it's worse. Now I'll start taking you with me for all the fun bits. I did manage to get the APS front rail onto the polymer body, locked it in, got the rail nice and lined up. So now to show you what we had done to everything else about the APS to try to make this work. I can even show you the gearbox shell from the APS originally. So to start off, I mentioned that we had shimmed the grip. So what we had is we had the grip shouldering as normal, and then we had these little faucet washers placed on both sides of the grip in order to shove up onto the gearbox in order to prevent it from pulling it too far. Well, as you saw, that was not successful. So we already have that pin out. So all we gotta do is start getting the receiver apart here. I can start showing you what's in the gearbox side. So it would used to be a quick change spring receiver. So there's absolutely nothing attached to the back of the gearbox. That's all floating. So This was actually the G&G gearbox from the raffle gun. For a quick show off on why we took the APS out. This thing is, shall I say, the worst kind of proprietary for servicing, even if it was an AEG. Seeing what I know, if this breaks for the trigger, you're done. If you're trying to find anything else replacement, you're done. And not to mention the fact that even with this original gearbox, we were still having nozzle alignment issues. That tells me enough I need to know about even an AEG build nozzle alignment. I will say they did put a lot of effort in trying to optimize to be a never have to modify it from factory on a budget. I'll give them credit for that. But serviceability is just not there. This is a AEG that if you were to have a failure, you're expected to just buy a new style, right? So you're out for airsoft and for the vibes, not for the performance. Get as many shots as you can out of it from the box, and then whenever it's done, it's done. So not personally a fan of that style, but that is all there is to say about it. All right. So for our original conversion to be Kythera ready, again, the big hurdle was the fact that this was a aftermarket trigger unit, but on top of that, it's a unique trigger itself, the mounting position. You can't use majority triggers out there without heavy modification. Wonder if it's coming up on camera, just how thin I had this drilled out to. This thing was just hanging on for dear life. And even then, you know, having to take material off the backside, this thing was absolutely just fragile. All because they ran the wires on the backside of the shell. So, I mean, I give them credit, wires on the backside of the shell, out of the way of the motor. You're not going to have issues of nicking the wires. That's great. But again, aftermarket compatibility for any sort of servicing is no bueno on this thing. It says enough to how much I had to butcher it. And even then, for trigger springs, for making the max trigger operational, I had to create my own spring. And then on top of that, I had another spring on the back side of the max pushing on this ledge. So I had a 2-spring system to give it enough tension in order to reset. Because this is mechanical. It's not just a mouse switch on a Wolverine Inferno or the like. You have to be able to mechanically reset the system. So without enough spring force, it wasn't functioning. So it took both the compression and the tension spring for it to fire. Okay, so with that monstrosity described, now we can show you what's actively in the G&G, because I'll be honest, I can't recall exactly the full suite that I applied to this, so I don't want to misspeak. I might as well just open her up, give you the truth and only the truth. Okay, sure enough. This has, let's call it my Nigel Special. On the end of the Kythera engine, I have a perfectly spaced washer to be flat against the end of the gearbox. That way it takes all of the slop out of the engine. It cannot budge forward or back, and up and down is not being controlled because it's effectively relying on the front of the gearbox to set the angle of the engine. That was the goal. I might as well apply a layer of tape shimming just while I'm at it. Because now that we're going to be using the G&G shell, you're not going to see anything pretty anyway. We really liked how you had the exposed Kythera on the APS receiver. It was a nice show off for the Kythera, but it's not functioning, so be as that may. I'm going to go back to the raffle gun that was nice and reliable. For the nozzle engagement, we did confirm that both my GMP Kythera and this G&G Kythera with the washer shimming, pushing all the way back on the cylinder posts, what that is doing is it's putting this nozzle's extension full extension is 601 to 600 for both of them from the front of the shell. And then for the Silent Alpha, the edge of the bucking lips is at 590. So we're having 10 thousandths of engagement with the nozzle. Fish confirmed that the Polar Star recommendation is 15 thousandths of engagement, which I have been doing a whole lot of tinkering on my end to figure out what is the perfect nozzle engagement for any of the builds, not just the Kythera. I've seen math say that you want 40 to 50 thousandths to get the BB pushed all the way up to the bucking mound. But then I found that the Kythera could not reset because it was being pushed so hard by the bucking in the Silent Alpha. So I've backed that off in the Kythera build of mine to be one washer back, which should be 8 thousandths less, which should be around a 30 to 32 thousandths engagement. So that's still on the heavy side for engagement. I'll try that out on the next outing, see how it does. I say that because that extra engagement, the 32 thousandths, is thanks to running a number 2 nozzle from Polar Star for that extra length. So while fish is at 10 thousandths, I'm at 32 thanks to a longer nozzle and one shim. All right, and like that, we've got it all back up in the G&G body. Like I said, I had a little electric tape, so now it's kind of fuggy. We'll go ahead and redo the nozzle alignment test. It's not as easy with fully enclosed receiver, obviously. But hey, we'll center on down. See if we immediately notice a drastic improvement or not. Looks to me like the nozzle is pretty close. It is towards the top of the barrel. I rub more on the top, and then whenever I try to push the barrel up, it's kind of centered. So it's definitely closer. So this is in the order of operation of, this was mostly set because this gearbox does have to use the gearbox nut, and then grip was fully tightened first, the pull down on the pins, and then stock screw done last so it doesn't pull too far up. So really, if I do want to put a little tilt on, I could probably tighten this first and then go to the grip. But we'll try this first and see if it binds up again. Back in rifle gun. These are with 40s. We were aiming for about 280, 285. So that's 240, 250. Yep, same problem. Last attempt of the night. This time stock screw was tightened first.